Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy J is John Cass, johncastnews.com. And John, this is an interesting comment, very Biden-esque. You know, these some battleground surveys came out, as they come out just about every day.
Right.
And they showed Trump getting 19% of the black vote in half a dozen battleground states, sort of in aggregate, which is almost 3 times the percentage of the black vote that he got 4 years ago.
Can Democrats win if that happens? No.
Be difficult. Angela Rye is sort of a frequent guest on that Charlemagne the God radio program. That was the program where Kamala had a good laugh about how she likes to smoke marijuana when she was trying to be cool on the campaign trail in 2020.
And if you don't vote for me, you ain't black.
Well, that's Biden.
Right.
And Angela Rye has another perspective on this alleged support that Trump is receiving from black Americans.
I don't make anything of these polls that are talking to imaginary black folks. I would love to know, for one, who they're talking to, because I've not seen.
So you think that they don't exist?
I think that they are. Maybe, you know what, they might be the invisible man that Ralph Ellison talked about in his book. I don't know who these people are. There was a Trump ad that was released, I believe today, that's targeting black women voters. And there are these people who, allegedly exist all throughout the country, and they're reading scripts. You can see their eye line going over here. And I think some of them might be paid to say some of these things.
So any black person supporting President Trump is either being paid or is imaginary. Interesting. For more on this and other political and cultural matters, pleased to be joined again by Carol Swain, Senior Fellow at the Institute for Faith and Culture, best-selling author most recently of The Adversity of Diversity, and a longtime academic as well at, Princeton and Vanderbilt, among other institutions. Carol, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
So what's your response to what Ms. Rye had to say about the black support that Trump is enjoying at present?
Well, one of those black Trump supporters is my oldest son, who had been a Democrat most of his life. I believe he may have voted for Trump in 2020. In 2024, he is actively supporting Trump on social media. He's getting into arguments. He's asking me for data. He's out there campaigning harder than I am.
How much is he being paid by the Trump campaign to do that?
He's just getting misery from the people who disagree with him, but he's doing it because he truly believes, and he thinks the people that are supporting Kamala and think Biden did a great job are just crazy. And so he actually has data, and he knows, just like they do or should know, that they're not better off today than they were, before Biden was elected. That the Trump economy was a good economy. I believe the virus was deliberately released, to disrupt our society and the world, because it impacted the whole world. But Trump was really making a real difference in America before the COVID-19 virus.
When your son talks that way, I'm reminded of the arguments that were made by people in Chicago who didn't want standards in schools. They didn't want tough grammar taught. They didn't want tough reading lists out. And they characterized it by saying, if you support that, you are acting white. And I wonder, has that gone away? The acting white nonsense, is that still out there?
Well, I can tell you that it is terrible, and it's a crime what's been done to black people in the inner city, that the standards have been lowered to the point
Yes.
that this generation today will not have the same opportunities as my generation, because even though I started off in a segregated school, they were strong on academics. And so when my public education moved from a segregated school to an integrated school, I was not behind. I never heard that math was racist. I knew that it was challenging because I didn't like to work out problems, but I was forced to work out problems. I was forced to do the things that eventually paid off with me becoming the woman I am today. And I can tell you that for my son, it's not just the economy. He has grandchildren, and he's very concerned about their education. And one of the things I'm doing is sending one of those children, the oldest great-grandchild, to a private school. He's going to a Catholic school. I'm Protestant, but the Catholics offer the best education that I can afford in the city where he lives.
Yeah, actually, speaking of that topic of school choice is where I'm going. Perhaps the opportunity to make this more of a campaign issue than it's been so far. I mean, it's sort of, to borrow from Victor Hugo, an idea whose time has come, and we're seeing it play out in real time with a supermajority of the states now having some form of school choice. But in big cities where you have a disproportionate share of the black population, America's black population living, that's often not the case. Places like Chicago, L.A., New York, certainly not the choices that you have sort of statewide in places like Indiana. And so I wonder, given the poor performance of these government school systems, particularly in urban centers, really across the nation, an opportunity to push this issue more to the policy forefront from Trump.
I mean, I don't know who can get through to Trump. I think he's made some terrible decisions during this campaign. I think he's losing part of his base. And the common sense things like you just articulated as far as the quality of schools and opportunity to push for school choice, they're not doing the things that you and I might think are rational.
Yeah, develop that a little bit more. I'm interested in your perspective on what you think some of the more damaging mistakes he's made so far have been.
I think he's kicked evangelical Bible-believing Christians to the curb, and that they are the ones that fasted and prayed for him in 2016 and 2020. They've stood by him. Some of them are in jail now because of January 6th. Not necessarily because they did anything, but because they were Trump supporters. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they have paid a high cost for supporting him. And when he talks about he supports reproductive rights or reproductive freedom, we know that's a euphemism for abortion. And when in Florida he makes the statement that cutting abortion off at 6 weeks, that women need longer than that, I mean, where does that come from? People that are Christians, we believe that life begins at conception, and that it's a taking of a human life, and we don't, like, if it has to take place, you wouldn't want it to take place, after 6 weeks. You wouldn't want it to take place at all. But when he says that the unborn child needs to be the mother needs more time than 6 weeks, then I think it's very troubling that he's not acting as he did in 2016 and 2020 when he really came down strongly for pro-life. What I'm reading is that after Roe, that more babies are being aborted. The Republicans are not addressing that. And then I believe that there are people who are delegates, Republican delegates from around the country, who thought they would have some input into the platform, that when they arrived, it was already prepackaged. They were forced to vote it up or down, and what they took out was any references to the sanctity of human life, which includes more than abortion. It includes the mutilation of children, as well as how we treat the elderly, it involves every stage of life. Well, that's taken out of the platform. They're not affirming that support for marriage, traditional marriage, in the platform, and any references really to a balanced budget or things that we traditionally associate with Republicans. I became a Republican because after I had my Christian conversion experience, I like that emphasis on God, country, and family. What I see is that they have moved much closer to the Democrats when they didn't have to. And so I'm beginning to just wonder, like, what is this?
That's fair critique. I mean, I can't really argue with that. I think you're on the mark. I think you can't. I mean, this is what the party's been doing for a long time, which is why the culture is where it is, which is to run away from the cultural issues. I mean, it's one thing to say the Dobbs decision is the Dobbs decision, and it's very clear that this is going to be fought out in the states. It's another thing to say, well, then I'm going to start commenting on what different states are doing, particularly states that are moving in a more pro-life direction, like Florida. To be critiquing that, I think, is unwise. I think that's right.
It seems almost evil, and it makes you just wonder at what is taking place. And I think that there will be consequences. I would not be surprised if Kamala won. And I say that because as a Christian believer, I believe God is a God of justice. I believe that Obama was part of his judgment on America. He took us in a direction where we scarcely recognize ourselves. Kamala, I believe, would totally take us over the edge. I mean, we're already over the edge, but I think it would be the end of America as we know it. And I think people like me and those of us who have been outspoken against the Biden administration, I have mocked Kamala because I think she's a joke, that we might find ourselves thrown into jail for something because they can make up things on you. I don't think that we will be safe, and they've already just totally eviscerated the whole idea of due process, presumption of innocence. The lawfare has destroyed law in America. If they get a simple majority, they will expand the Supreme Court and load it with left-wing people, Marxists. America will be destroyed. That's what's at stake. And meanwhile, Donald Trump is I don't know who he is. Maybe this is who he always was. And I say this as someone who intends to vote for him. I'm deeply disappointed.
Yeah, well, I think there's a sort of a people-pleasing, pandering aspect to Trump, like most politicians. And I know he's not a politician, but yes, he is. So something else, though, too, particularly because your story, and we've told it before, but if people don't know the story of Carol Swain, I mean, just very briefly, I mean, you worked as a cashier at McDonald's. You earned a GED while you were doing that and raising a family. And then you went on to have this incredible academic career at some of the most prestigious universities in the world, or at least they used to be. And so it's a pretty amazing story that could only happen in America, sort of speak. So so your reaction when you see Kamala and Tim Walz and other Democrats last week at the DNC suggesting that J.D. Vance's escape from poverty in Appalachia to make it to Yale Law School and then a successful career in business before he got into politics is somehow some sort of betrayal of the place that he came from, and going to Yale Law School is some sort of is being some sort of East Coast elitist as compared to the Midwest everyman that is Tim Walz?
Well, before I get to that, I want to say that in the spirit of honesty, since Kamala said she worked at McDonald's, I believe Wikipedia says I worked at McDonald's, and someone got that wrong. I believe it was Burger King.
Okay. All right.
It was a half a day.
Okay.
A half a day. My fast food career was half a day, so I want to make sure that that's understood.
All right.
And as far as
you couldn't cut it at Burger King, but you could cut it at Princeton?
I have respect for people who do fast food and do those jobs that I just can. There's some things I can't do. I don't do it well. But yeah, I was a high school dropout, one of 12, married at 16. By the time I was 20, had small children. Part of my life, I've been an unwed mother, and I came from dirt poverty. And I identify with J.D. Vance. I know how hard it is to get out of that kind of poverty and to be able to go to college and do well. It's so much you have to learn. It's not just the academics. You got to learn the culture. And I, too, have a Yale law degree. I have a master's in law. I'm not an elitist. I haven't forgotten my roots, and neither has J.D. Vance. And so I was a big supporter of J.D. Vance because I think he understands America. He loves America. He served in the military, and he's exactly what we need. There's nothing weird about coming from poverty, becoming a success, and standing up for American values. And the statement he made about the childless cat ladies, there were probably a lot of them he encountered over the course of his life, and he has a sense of humor. And just like with Trump, they can't stand anyone that jokes. I mean, he put out this meme about the debate that was really funny that had the beauty queen that was airbrained.
Right.
Airbrained. And, I mean, so he has a sense of humor. I like that.
That's why they hate him. That's why they hate him
because he's smart.
Destroy him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Carol Swain, senior fellow at the Institute of Faith and Culture, best-selling author, most recently of The Adversity of Diversity. Carol, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day.
Bye. You too. And Carol joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
This is Sean Thompson for Donley Auctions.